Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche pregame show presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Megan and Rudo coming to you live as the Avs take on the Minnesota Wild on the second half of a back-to-back with travel against a rested team. So a very balanced schedule. You know, good job, NHL schedulers. We're proud of you for making sure all the games happen, even if they aren't balanced in any way, shape, or form. Not that big a deal, though, yet. We'll see how I feel about it and a couple more back-to-backs. But for tonight, the big news for the Avs, Josh Manson back activated and ready to go. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Megan, I don't want to beat around the bush here because this is a big game for Colorado. It's directly against Minnesota, the team they are competing for, technically tied in point totals for the third spot in the Central Division. Must win or would be nice to win?
I really hate that qualifier. It is a must win. They kind of all require at least getting a single point, but this feels like one they need to get two out of because of the central positioning that they are competing for. Avs have games in hand, but this is just an important primer too for what the rest of this stretch run will look like, and this will set the tone.
If it wasn't a SEGABABA and all the qualifiers I just said, I'd say definitely must win. Team you have to beat, assert yourself in the Central Division as a playoff team. With all the qualifiers, maybe not quite, but pretty close to a must win.
We said 3 points.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You need 2 points out of this one for it to be 3 out of the back-to-back. So I guess it is a must win at the end of the day. It will be interesting to see exactly how the Avs do deploy themselves. Ben Myers was sent down the other night. Obviously, that's to make room for Josh Manson, but exactly what they end up doing with their forward core and things like that. You talked about potentially giving Alex Newhook more minutes the other night. I know who I want to step up in this game, but before I answer, I'm going to make you answer first on who's got to be the big star tonight.
It's Josh Manson. No, I'm just kidding. But I think he is going to be, especially because he has fresh legs under him, he'll be a huge addition. But I'm looking at Mikko Rantanen only because of top stars in the last Tampa game. He was one that remained a little bit quieter and had one of the best chances in overtime. So hopefully he comes out the gate a little frustrated and excited to right the wrongs of that.
I was also picking Mikko for the record. I'm feeling like a 3-point night from that guy tonight, and I think he's going off for the Avs. They need him to go off, we'll put it that way. McKinnon can only do so much by himself up there. Wild are what they are this year. It's kind of a weird spot for them. Obviously, they still have the high-end talent with Kirill. They aren't getting the career years out of some of the guys that they got last year. Their goaltending it exists. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I wouldn't say it's great. So it's just somewhere in the middle. They have just a weird team. On the back end, they've been scratching Matt Dumba at times randomly. I just don't know. We've talked a lot, actually. You bring this up a lot. It's a really good point. I have no idea what Minnesota's identity is this year, the same way we talk about Colorado finding themselves. I could not tell you Minnesota's identity. So it feels like that's a team where you should be able to get on top and stay on top of them. With that being said, Josh Manson, not necessarily helping you get on top, but should help you stay on top defensively, right? Do you expect him to drop into the Avs top 4 here, or is this an easing in for him?
Because of how they deployed Bo pretty much at 100%, they didn't really keep him on a short leash. I'm expecting they'll have him in the top 4 as well.
Okay.
Especially Byram and Manson together have history and familiarity with one another that I could see them doing Gerard Taves, Byram, Manson. Not sure about that bottom pairing because McDermott can penalty kill, but it does feel like he should be the one not in this game tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and Josh Manson can penalty kill, so they're not really losing a penalty killer if that is the person that is left out, and they can then really shelter whatever that bottom pairing shapes out to be.
I struggle to find what Curtis McDermott's spot is in the lineup at this point with Manson back in. As we've talked about, Andreas Englund has been more solid defensively and has done a little bit of that stepping up in the categories of fighting and being a little bit of an enforcer or whatever you want to call it. That kind of just removes Curtis McDermott from the equation on the defensive side to me. Now, if they want to play McDermott as a 12th forward or something, you can have that conversation, but I just don't see how he fits into the defense, even just getting the one defenseman back for Colorado. Manson in particular, you talked about the penalty kill side of it. That's been good already for Colorado. Is he able to stabilize them defensively? Can he play enough minutes to shelter the bottom pairing a little bit more?
Manson?
Yeah.
I think it's possible, and I do feel like it'll be in typical Bednar fashion. These pairs do get switched throughout the course of the game, that we probably see Byron Manson, but we also probably see Manson alongside that third pair, whoever that is paired alongside him. So I think it'll be something like that, but I don't know if it'll be Manson whose minutes are completely sheltered.
Okay. I do think it's a decent matchup for Colorado to get away with a little bit of that. You're pretty much going to stick Taves against Kirill every time you can, and then after that, maybe you can get away with a little bit more than you can against a team like Tampa, put it that way. So we'll see exactly how that usage goes. Keep in mind, Devon Taves did play 30 minutes last night, so there could be some, hey, he runs out of legs halfway through this game.
That's why I think they should lean on Manson to play something like a 20-minute game. They did it with Byram. That's the only reason I'm saying it, but I don't know what Manson's injury was and what he's coming off of, but he has been skating
for a good while. Yeah.
So my hope is that he's pretty ready to go in the same way that Bo was.
Certainly hope so. We talk about it a lot, but the Avs often like to make life hard on themselves. Hopefully Josh Manson can prevent that, make life a little bit easier on a night where, look, the Avs are facing down a game where they're going to run out of gas. You're even looking in goal, and Georgiev's going to have to go again tonight. If they're not leading heading into the third period, you probably don't feel very good about this hockey game just because that's the way SEGABABAs go. So you would like to see them get out and stay out in front. Granted, that's true of every game, but a little more oomph behind it in a game like tonight's. I'm curious to see the atmosphere of tonight. Will we see the same kind of playoff levels that we did against Tampa, or do you think this will be knocked down a peg?
I always feel like games with Minnesota get a little contentious. And especially because of what they're competing for within the Central Division, I think that Minnesota also sees the stakes from that perspective. And they haven't had a good last few 10 games, so they're probably especially keen to take tonight very seriously. And they recognize that Avs is coming in tired. They're on the second leg of back-to-back. Minnesota knows that.
They certainly do. I don't think it'll be quite to the same level of Tampa just because caliber of opponent. No offense to Minnesota. They're not as good as Tampa Bay. Just factual. I'm not trying to throw any shade.
If Greenway comes anywhere near Georgiev, JT Compher is going to drop him, apparently.
Who's going to step up tonight? I think JT Compher.
It's that guy
punch that card.
It's who you always expect it to be. It's JT Compher.
No, that's his one. He's like, all right, I'm good for 6 months. I did my fight. I'm done now.
I'm a little sad they didn't let Myers go back to Minnesota for this game.
Yeah, could have been a hometown boy for that one, huh?
It's okay, though. Loveland, they needed him there.
Loveland needs a lot of things
For
at the
real, for
moment.
real.
Yeah, they're fighting through it at the moment, to say the least. But that's I guess that's the deal when you're the AHL team to an NHL team that can't become not broken. So
It's sad.
still a lot of season left for them too, though. Should be fun. You're the Eagles person around here. Am a little bit curious. The Avs did call up JoJo over Rantanen. Now, granted, JoJo's backing up. They're expecting to ride Georgiev. Do you think there was a case for Rantanen to get called up and maybe play a game?
Absolutely. I think sometimes the logic is he will just continue to get regular minutes and starts with the Eagles.
Yeah.
It's valuable for his development. Whereas with JoJo, it's a bit dicey what he's going to be doing up with the Avs, and he is a little more trusted there, taking NHL minutes. So I think it's a two-pronged thing that isn't a demerit of Anunen in the season that he's having. I think it's more reflective of JoJo and the anticipated role.
Fair enough. Just getting Rantanen as many reps as possible. Not going to argue with that one. You kind of already talked about the Minnesota Avs situation in the Central Division with the playoffs. I wanted to talk about the rest of the division because it's a pretty interesting spot right now. I know we've seen a little bit of doom and gloom around the Avs every time they lose. The Avs and the Nashville Predators are the only two teams in the Central Division that are above 500 in their last 10. The closest beyond that is Winnipeg at 5-5. But I just want to point out the Avs have been gaining ground on the entire division over their last 10 games. They have multiple games in hand on the teams in front of them. They're now only 8 points back of Winnipeg. So, yes, your immediate focus is Minnesota and putting them behind you, but you rattle off a couple of wins. Other teams keep losing, and the Avs really aren't that far away from talking about chasing down the second or even Dallas in first in this division. What is your mindset there? If you're Colorado, are you trying to chase them down, or are you focused on getting ahead of Minnesota?
Definitely getting ahead of Minnesota, and whether or not they're counting on other teams losing or winning, they should just assume other teams are winning, even if they actually are losing, and keep their focus on winning as many games as possible, because they don't want to put any amount of their fate in the hands of the failures of other teams, which I don't think that they would, but that's why I think it's important to keep their sights locked on Minnesota for right now.
I don't disagree. I do think Minnesota is the more immediate concept there. But with the games in hand the Avs have, if those go their way, they're really only 4 points back of Winnipeg. And you're having a conversation about how far can the Avs really push this in the playoffs. Now, they do have to take care of business. If they start losing games, if they don't continue to make up ground on the rest of the division, that conversation goes out the window very quickly. But I do think it's interesting that we've seen such a swing in concept of the Avs where people still aren't even confident that this is a playoff team, when in reality, they're actually quite close to being one of the top teams in the division. Can the Avs get there? Again, you want to ignore other teams' play? Fine. Can the Avs get there as currently constructed, or is it going to take Landeskog getting back to really put them over that ledge
to win the Central?
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't sound pessimistic that I'm not confident that they can win the Central as currently constructed or with Landeskog back, because I just don't envision Landeskog returning so immediately. Like, once he begins to get back on the ice, there's still a ways out before he actually gets in games. And I just don't see that within reach, but I see them being able to string together a competitive team, especially once they do get healthy, get a Landeskog back, that is going to matter more in the playoffs.
I agree. I think there's a very real possibility that Landy doesn't even come back until the playoffs. I'm just curious at what the break point, what it would take for the Avs to really contend for the top of the Central. And, obviously in the immediate, getting Cale Makar back is a big deal and things like that. But I'm not sure how far they can go even at 90% health. Because 100% health is just a whole different animal when you're talking about Colorado.
Absolutely. And it's just the state of the season and the point that they're at right now. What's happened has happened. The injuries have happened. They have snowballed on this team. Like, it doesn't mean that they can't be a competitive team in the playoffs, but in looking at winning the Central specifically, they're just at a really difficult point in the season, and we know about the injuries. We know what that meant. We know what that did to the team. It has just put them in this position.
I know some people are going to be mad that we're talking about injuries again, but they can deal with it. The injuries go beyond the obvious. Eric Johnson out, Gabe Landeskog out. You've talked a lot about Val Nichushkin. Probably not 100% still, although he looked better the other night. The Avs are just kind of going through it all over their lineup at this point. And it's not as bad as it was 2 months ago, but they're still not across the finish line of being healthy yet. So, again, they're going to have to grind it out all the way through. Do think it'll be interesting, though, as last year the Avs didn't have to scoreboard watch at all. I know you don't want to, but I guarantee you everyone on that team is going to be scoreboard watching every night just because they want to know where they stand in the standings. Does it matter to them? Or are they happy going into the playoffs as the third seed in the Central?
I think it does matter to them. I also think that they have to grapple with the reality of the situation too. But the reason they are NHL players is because of the competitive instinct that they just must have to play this level of hockey. And so I think it's an instinct that's in each and every one of them that they're probably not satisfied in the third place spot. But there's only so much that they can do too. So I do think that they have to grapple with the reality of the situation, but I bet they're unsatisfied.
Unsatisfaction can make for a hungry team in the playoffs.
And they need to be. Bednar talks about games, especially the games where they lose leads late in the third period, and he talks about how they didn't have a killer instinct. And this is a team that earned trust within the fan base last year because they demonstrated the ability to find ways to win and close out games a number of different ways. Even when they did make mistakes and they did let leads slip away from them, they found ways to win. This year's team has not quite earned that same level of trust, and we know why. We know that they've been limited in the healthy bodies in their lineup to make in-game adjustments to get a little more creative with finding new ways to win. But even still, this team is a little bit different. They've had to overcome even more adversity. Doesn't mean they won't be a competitive team come the playoffs. It just means it's a different situation, and they're going to have a killer instinct if they want to be competitive in the playoffs.
All right. Well, maybe we can help you find your killer instinct over on DraftKings Sportsbook with a couple of bets today. We already have both taken Mikko Rantanen. First goal scorer, he's plus 850. Anytime goal scorer, he's plus 115. The guy's just due. He's got to get goal 200 at some point, right? We'll see if it actually pans out, but maybe splash a little bit of cash on that. I think he's got a shots on goal line as well that you can get in on. Either way, you can get money on Mikko. Yeah, it's 3.5 shots, and it's minus, so maybe not the wow. It's really hard to make money on the Avs shots bets, isn't it? All right. You can take the Avs as pretty big. If you take the 60-minute line, pretty big dogs. You get plus 170 for Colorado on the 60-minute line. That's not a terrible bet. Just throwing it out there. Megan, high scoring or low scoring tonight? What are you feeling?
Oh, I feel high score.
All right. Over plus 100 to take the 6. You can, of course, always take alternate lines. Go with whatever you want. Over at DraftKings Sportsbook, when you sign up with code DNVR, a new account, bet $5 on anything to get $200 in free bets to play with, and then splash it on random first goal scorers like Megan to make lots of money. That's the way to do it, apparently, around here. Check them out. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See the show notes down below for details. And, of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right. You're pretty up to speed with Minnesota versus Colorado. You're old enough to know that, even if you were a little young for the Detroit Avs thing. Would you consider Minnesota a rival for the Avalanche?
You know, the reason I lean towards yes is because the atmosphere in Ball Arena for Minnesota games is hostile. Like, I've had safety concerns in Ball Arena and on the light rail home, and I've seen both Avs and Minnesota fans get contentious, get really nasty with each other in a way that I haven't seen at other games. And even one of our shows last year with Minnesota, the comments were also a little volatile. It attracted a very weird community. So I think that, at least where the fan bases are concerned, there's definitely some heated business there. But I also feel like on ice, there are some things that have also gotten a little bit heated. Like I remember at the end of last year, Logan O'Connor caused some strife within the Minnesota fan base. Obviously, Greenway and Kemper caused a little bit of strife. Like that's pretty recent history too, but it definitely goes back beyond that.
So key to being a hockey rival is be worried people might commit crimes.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing. It's when you fear for your safety, that's when you know it's real.
Doesn't get any more real than that, I think. I don't know how I feel. I really don't feel like it's a true rivalry. I also definitely think my vision is clouded from the Detroit Avs rivalry as one of the greatest ever in sports, and nothing is ever going to live up to that. So it's tough. It's tough to follow that one, put it that way.
But it's so good for the plot. We need more rivalries.
I agree with that. I am in. I am way in for more rivalries in the NHL. I think making the games feel that much more important is cool. For this game, Megan, any final thoughts on tonight before we go experience whatever this SEGABABA holds?
No, I hope for the best here. It's a game that they're capable of winning, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I'm sure there's some tired legs under them.
All right. Well, maybe they'll just have to skate on their hands. They won't be as tired.
They won't be as tired.
We did get a $5 super chat from Bank saying would be happy with 1 point, but 2 would be massive for us. Yeah, I think less than 1 doesn't feel very good. Even understanding contexts. When you give up points in games like the Tampa Bay game, you have to make up for them somewhere. The Avs have the opportunity to do that tonight. Hopefully they do. Even if they don't, you can catch us post-game at no matter what, breaking it all down. So be sure to tune in to that. No watch-along, unfortunately, tonight because the Nuggets are going. But after the game, we will talk to you then.